Never underestimate the power of your wood. Well, hey there. My name's Chris. Welcome back to the acreage. So on Saturday, I posted a video about the recent permit issues that I've been having. And it really did take the wind out of my sails. And that's why I posted, well, I guess it was a bit of a rant. I haven't heard back this week from the planner yet, but I think we'll be able to work it out. But now my approach is one of, I'm not worried about the house. All I care about right now is figuring out a path that I can get building. And that might mean that I push back the house an extra year or two. But if that's what it takes to just make progress and not get fixated and bogged down by the bureaucratic machine, so be it. So first this week, I needed to move some of the material around. I've sold a bunch of the poplar that I cut down a couple weeks ago, so I moved it up to where the truck is so that way the buyer can come and basically back right up to it and grab it. And the pile of rock that I had made near the front of the clearing, I needed to move a bunch of that back so that way I could start working on the fire pit. This week and last week, I did a lot of the usual. I took down some trees. One of the trees that I took down, well, I think taking down is probably a literal description, but it's up there and very much hung up in another tree, in a birch specifically. And it's not just like hung up like it's like leaning against it. Like I pulled on that thing. And I pulled on that thing with a lot of force. That's not dangerous at all. The little drill-powered winch, I think, is capable of 1,000 pounds of pull, and it wasn't enough. But, I mean, was it enough? Well, maybe, but the problem is that the tree gives, and it bent forward, and I didn't want to get too involved with that. As it was, I had the tree hanging up in midair, and that's a little on the risky side of things. Well, that was unexpected. I think it's safe to say it's not coming out of the tree on its own. What I'm going to do instead, so the tree is hanging up that way. I'm still having to clear out this way so that my friend can come out with his bike and help me pull out all the logs. But I'm going to then pull that tree that way, so that way it's basically twisting the top until it breaks. I'm going to use a snatch block for that because when it blows, it is going to have a bit of energy to it. And the other thing that I learned this week is if you have a mason in your life, hug them because they need it. Oh my God, is concrete a lot of work. And what I did this week was create the foundation of the world's ugliest fireplace. That being said, I'm proud of the amount of work that I've done. And it's moving forward slowly. I'm learning a lot. one of the things that I learned very quickly is that what looks easy on YouTube channels, it definitely is not easy. I certainly underestimated the amount of time just mixing the concrete would take, but I'll get to that in a second. So the first thing that I did was I drilled a bunch of holes into the rock, which I did in a week and a half ago's video. And then when I came back, I made sure to clean off the rock. I wanted to make sure that there's no sand and debris, because sand and debris can make it so that way the concrete or mortar doesn't stick very well. So I wanted to make sure things were good and clean. I gotta go to the box store and grab some rebar and some mortar so I can at least get the rebar in. I'll build a platform and start putting stones down. The biggest issue is I need to be able to clean the stones because the mortar doesn't stick very well if there's dirt on it. And that takes a lot of water. But it is what it is. That's when I got that wonderful email. You have got to be kidding me. Seriously. So when I was buying materials, I bought a bunch of Type S mortar, which from what I've read is the kind that you want to use around the firebox. But that Type S mortar is expensive and I hadn't worked with it. And because of the sort of slope that I'm working on, I wanted to have something that cured a little bit more quickly, so that way I sort of could basically place the stone and not have to worry about it as long. I was cleaning it, I noticed that this piece is basically splitting off. So I'm going to help it. Don't want it to fail underneath my fire.
Never underestimate the power of your wood. There we go. Son of a...
So the first thing that I wanted to do with that mortar was to cement in the rebar. I bought some fiberglass rebar at the orange store, and I bought it because it was light and easy to cut. Though one real big lesson, make sure you're wearing gloves, because the little shards of those fiberglass rebar, they don't feel very nice. I learned that pretty quick. I'm thinking half that seems unnecessary. The whole fire pit, like the firebox, is probably going to be about here. So those are way too tall. To the grinder! That seems a little less bad. So my less than ideal plan for today is I absolutely need to get the rebar grouted in, but I'm almost certainly going to have more mortar than I actually need. So I want to at least be able to mortar in the back ones so that way they stay in place, so that, because they're obviously prone to fall over. But I want to sort of plan out roughly what my layout of stone would be, and just so that way I'm more or less have an idea of what's going on, and I'm not going on the fly when I'm trying to put mortar down. I know that this is not exactly high quality masonry, but I'm trying to just get a feel for it. You know, I said this before, I think that this fireplace isn't intended to be a glorious monument to masons everywhere, because I honestly have no idea what I'm doing, other than having watched a few videos. It's more to get a sense of experience with the materials and trying to do my best with it. I mean, this rock obviously isn't ideal. I've done my best to clean it up, but it's as local as she comes. So, you know, yay for that. So we'll see. I've got some water in the bucket. I'm going to add the mortar to it until I have the right consistency. I'll do up the rebar. I'll try and glue down, like I placed these stones down so that way I knew these other pieces would fit on top of it, so that way I can get them in place, and if I have enough left over, I'll start mortaring in the bigger stones. But the stuff is fast set, so we'll see how much swearing I get done. Not sure why I thought it was a good idea, but I added the mortar to the water. I know roughly what the consistency of mortar should be, though. I mean, I haven't really done any mortaring in my life before, but I mean, I've been around it from time to time. And yeah, that was a bad idea. Not necessarily because I couldn't make a workable mix. So I used the mortar to fill the hole. So I drilled out the hole with the SDS drill just to draw most of the water out. Then I used the rebar just to scrape in a little bit of mortar, push it down the hole, and then move it up and down until I felt like it was, you know, well encased within the hole. And sure enough, they were rock solid once the stuff cured. And the mortar in question is supposed to cure in about 15 minutes. And that was the mistake that I made, was I didn't know what that looked like. And so I started mixing it, because it does have to be mixed fairly evenly. And I got a consistency that seemed okay. And I started to apply it and put up my first stones. All well and good. But what I didn't realize is after it sat for a few seconds, it would sort of absorb the water. And it really changed in consistency. And I took that to mean that it was setting. And it wasn't, I learned, but like I was freaking out going as fast as I could because I had half a bag of this $40 mortar. And I did not want to run out of time. But as I was going along, I started to realize that no, it wasn't really changing consistency. And but I was still going as quickly as I could because in my mind, like, this is going to set off any second, and I didn't want to end up in that situation because I didn't really think I wanted to buy another bag, mainly because of the cost. And, you know, as I'm realizing, I should have started with the slower set stuff because at least then I would have had the time to understand what I was doing. And then made the mistake that because, again, I'm on the slope, I did the perimeter stones at first. And in doing the perimeter stones, I was going quick, I wasn't thinking, I was putting them in place, and I wasn't really measuring.
My name's Chris, and I am not a mason. Unfortunately, the battery died partway through that. So you got to miss where I suddenly realized that it wasn't setting nearly as fast as I thought it was, and I had a little bit more time. I should have made a very small batch to begin with and saw how long it took to set. And I mean, I know I'm not supposed to add the concrete to water, but I don't have a proper mixing thing, so I figured that would be easier. And it's not that it wasn't easy, it was actually fairly easy. It's just I didn't realize how subtle the difference between too dry and too wet is. So I don't know if it's too dry. I guess time will tell. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, kind of what I'm trying to do here is create a box that I can then just take regular concrete, pour it in, add a bunch of rocks just to fill it up to roughly this level, just below the firebox. Make a flat spot. I'm going to put a steel plate where the bottom of the firebox is going to be. So I wanted to use this fast set stuff to be able to make sure that at least now everything's sort of stuck to the rock and it's going to be less prone to just falling off like it did a couple times. Ugh. But that was exciting. Definitely learned something new today.
I mean, I had a guide of roughly how big I wanted it to be based on the rebar that I'd put in. But I made some mistakes. I put a couple pieces that were too close to the rebar, which made my life difficult later on. And I hadn't really thought about, well, how big of a firebox do I want? Well, now I'm kind of committed. And in hindsight, what I should have done is I should have started with small amounts of concrete and built out from the center so that I was, at the end, mortaring on the larger stone from the outside, backed by the core that had already set. But doing it the other way around just caused me no end of grief. And as I'm going along, like I think I mentioned in the video before last, that this week is supposed to be quite warm, and it's living up to that. And so I was sweating, I wasn't drinking enough, I was overheating, making more mistakes. In the end, I'm learning a lot. And I mean, that's really why I'm doing this fireplace, is because I wanted to learn a lot. It's going to be ugly, absolutely ugly, but I'm okay with that. I may end up scabbing on another layer of stone on one side just to make it look a little nicer, but we got to do what we got to do. Came back the next day, and now that I had more or less a perimeter, and I sort of understood the materials a little bit better, I wanted to start filling the center with concrete because I knew I wouldn't be able to fill it all the way up because it would tend to slump and push out and leak out the sides. So I mixed up a small batch to fast setting mortar, so that way I could plug some of the holes around the perimeter that were left from the day before. I let that cure for about 20 minutes or so, just so it was stiff enough to hold back the wet concrete. And then I started mixing concrete. I realized the day before that, trying to mix the mortar in just a pail with the trowel, that was so much work, and it was really hard to do a good job of the mix. Found one surprisingly at the store, just at the bottom of the hill from where my house is. Hey, Lonnie. And yeah, got to mixing. Bought a tub as well at the orange store, so that way I could have a better location to mix the concrete. And mixing the concrete was actually easy in the sense that I knew what the texture should look like, because I didn't want to have a really runny mix, both from the standpoint that it cures stronger when you use less water, but I have limited amount of water. I'm bringing my water in from town. And so the less water that I use in each mix, the more mixes I can get out of the pails and jugs that I'm bringing. So that went okay. It didn't go as far as I expected, but I was using a lot of the stone that I've been collecting and placing it in the void to take up the space. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned through this process was that I would be better off to just farm it up with like wood and pour it that way and just leave it as such and then scab on from the outside, because it was so much work to mix, and then getting the stones arranged and washing the stones to get all of the organic matter off and the sand and the dust, and making sure that the stones are wet when you put them in the concrete and all that sort of stuff. It just took so much time, and as I'm going along, I'm getting more and more tired. But if I had done it the other way, then it would just be setting up the forms. Yeah, it's a lot of work still to mix the concrete, but then it's just a matter of shoveling it in, doing the next one, shoveling it in, and going until you can't go anymore, and then putting something at that interface, because if the concrete cures too much, then it doesn't bond well to itself and you get what's called a cold shut. So I would rather do it more slowly and then just fill it up. But I mean, again, I don't have a huge amount of knowledge about actually working with concrete. Like, you know, my hands are the ones that are doing the mixing, my hands that are doing the ones with the pouring. And so while I have a lot of academic knowledge of concrete, this is teaching me how little I actually know, how big a gap there is between the intellectual understanding of something and the actual practical application thereof. Then I came back after that day, and then today poured another lift of concrete, another 3 bags. And I had a little bit of mortar left, so I used that to try and cement in some other pieces to sort of, especially in the backside where I knew it would slough off. And one of the biggest problems that I've had as we've been going along is that because I didn't plan the full, I guess, arrangement of stones, that because I was doing it from the outside, they don't interlock really well. And now on the backside, it's not going to fit together exceptionally well. And I'm going to have to make some adjustments, shall we say, in order to be able to get the back to work for the context. basically I'm up to the point now where I'm sort of at the fire floor level. I have a piece of steel that I'm going to cut. That's going to be the floor of the fireplace. I'm going to build up walls on either side and up the back with stone still, and then sort of narrowing up to the chimney. And I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to build the firebox. I don't want to use firestone or fire bricks, which are sort of the right way to do it because it's going to be outside. Water and fire bricks don't mix; they just dissolve. So I might just put some pieces of steel plate in there. I mean, small chance they could melt, some chance that they're going to cause the mortar on the other side of them to degrade. I have no idea how well this thing is going to last. While there's enough concrete in there, and there's enough mortar in there, I don't know how many voids are in there because no experience with getting the air bubbles out. I tried my best because, again, I kind of understand, but I didn't have any tools at the ready to be able to vibrate the concrete to make sure that all the pockets are out. But then at the same time, it's not really that structural. It just has to pull itself up, and that's it. But so far, to get to the point that I am, is 3.5 days of work. And I had no idea it was going to take that long. And it's pretty sobering, really, because one of the things that I had planned all along was the central wall of my house is going to be stone. That is a lot of concrete. That is a lot of stone. Now, I think now that I'm starting to get some experience with it, I'm starting to understand where I can start making efficiencies and the things that I should be doing and shouldn't be doing. Obviously, then I'm going to have a concrete mixer. I'm not going to try mixing it by hand. But like I've said, I think a few times now in my videos, that I like doing things the hard way in order to be able to really understand the process. And oh boy, was this the hard way. But I mean, it's part of it. Part of that learning curve. So I think, I have a bunch of bags of type S mortar, which are not the rapid set variety, which are more appropriate for a firebox. So that's what I'm going to be using to build the walls up from where they are. I think I've got one more bag of concrete to put down and try and level out a little bit. I'm not too worried about being perfectly level. Well, actually, I want the whole thing to tilt out so any water that falls in runs out. But I'm going to be using a sand bed under the steel plate. So the steel plate is just going to sit on the sand, and then I'm going to build a fire on top of that. And that way the steel can expand and contract without being stuck to anything. So making sure I've got enough of a gap on either side. And then, build up the walls, like I said. I have one really large stone that I think is going to go over top of it, which has been in my two previous fire pits. So it's a bit of a tradition now. And I've already got the chimney pipe. I only have a 6-inch chimney pipe right now. I'm going to put a hole in for an 8-inch chimney pipe because one of the things that a lot of times the fire pits that I've built don't have enough draw through the chimney. So you get a lot of smoke in your face, and I want to be able to adjust that. So that might either be with getting a larger pipe later on or building baffles so that way I can sort of close the sides so that way I limit the amount of airflow that's going into the fire. And I really should have taken more time to measure the fire pit beforehand, so that way I knew more of what I'm getting into. But the fire pit is 36 inches across and 24 inches deep. Almost exactly, which is kind of funny considering I didn't actually measure it. I was just sort of going by eye and panic. But that's okay. So that leaves me with, say, maybe a 24 by 18 firebox, because I'm not looking to build like big raging bonfires or anything. I'm just looking at having a place where I can be burning. I'm going to build a little, bushcraft structure around the thing, so that way I can enjoy being out here and certainly enjoy the fruits of my labor, because boy, have I ever had to put a lot of labor into that thing. So I guess that's it for today. One of the things I'd really like to ask those of you that have been watching my videos, especially those of you that watched the last one, was if those types of videos where I'm just giving a realistic assessment of what's going on, if those are something that you find upsetting or disturbing, or you think that because I did the one, that's going to be sort of the norm of it, like having a talking head video versus just doing the thing as I did in this video, because I lost 3 subscribers, and I don't know that I necessarily need to take a whole lot from that, but at the same time, trying to understand what you, the audience, actually wants to see and what you desperately don't want to see would be helpful. So like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.